All right, let's kick this off. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all our audience members. I know we have people all over the world joining us today. We're excited to bring you this webinar today in sponsorship with USEReady, Salesforce, and the Vault. Really excited about the topic today, transformational trends in banking, leveraging analytics to thrive in a post-pandemic era. I'll be your host today, and we've got an action-packed set of content and star-studded cast. So Kimberly, next slide, and we'll go through the speakers today. We have your truly Kevin Curtis. I'm with Tableau. I've been running analytics teams for almost a decade here, and I run the financial services team for the United States. With us today is Greg Jacoby. He's the senior director on the banking industry team over at Salesforce. He was at a bank for over 20 years and definitely the right person to kind of walk through the trends we're seeing in industry, a lot of deep expertise and knowledge in that space. From there, we're going to pivot to more of a fireside chat hosted by Michael Olson, who's the go-to-market lead for the financial services team over at USEReady. And the customer we have today, really excited for his time. Thanks again, Gavi, for that. Gabriel Gabi Galoni, goes by Gabi, is the SVP of Financial and Strategic Analytics at Dime Community Bank. So that's the set. We've got about 45 minutes. We will record the session. I'll be watching the chat, and we'll have Q&A at the end. And just to level set on the flow and the content at a high level, Greg's going to walk through those transformational changes. Why are we using that phrase and that term? Because we don't think these changes are going away. And in a post-pandemic era, there's been a lot of change and disruption, and we want to just level set for the audience. What are those changes? How do we get ahead of that? And just be aware. And then we'll pivot to, as I mentioned, the fireside chat. And we really just want to talk about how data is going to lead us through these changes. I think if you're on the call today, you recognize the importance of data and what it can do for your organization. But we really want to drill into the best practice of that and maximize the potential there, as we see data as the new oil. And we'll just spend some time on how Dime Community Bank is using data to make their decisions moving forward. And the third part is really the how. And I think that's what we really hope is the secret sauce of today's discussion. We don't have the world's biggest bank talking about how they've been doing this for 30 years. We have Gavi and Dime Community Bank talking about how they're starting this journey today, the framework they've outlined, the blueprint that they've made strategic decisions off of, and where they're at in that process, and all the key moments that have gone into that. And we really want to unpack that for the audience in more detail today. So that's the arc. And with that, I'll turn it over to Greg Jacoby to walk through the trends. Greg?
Thanks, Kevin. And thank you, everybody, for spending some time with us today. I'm going to set the table here by sharing some research that we have done here at Salesforce to really understand the trends in financial services. I hope you get some value out of understanding what those trends are in your own business. I will tell you that the outcome of this research is very important to us internally at Salesforce in terms of driving the innovation that we're bringing to our customers on a regular basis. And it's something we will continue to do and gather feedback to make sure we are aligned to the right priorities of the industry. So let's dive in. And I've got three big trends I'm going to cover for you. I will give a brief plug here. If you want to dive deeper into this data, we'll get you a link as a follow-up out of this session. But a lot of good detail in here. And of course, there's a public Tableau dashboard out there, so you can slice and dice all this data yourself in terms of regions or subsectors and all that kind of good stuff. So the first thing that we saw in surveying our customers, and what's key to know about this research is that we did a cohort prior to the pandemic. And then when the pandemic hit, said, you know what, we better wait before we publish some of these results and really understand what's happening, because we just had a massive change happen. And so we also have a cohort of folks that we surveyed after or sort of in the midst of the pandemic. And it was really telling to see how priorities shifted. So one of the things we saw, and you can go to the next slide, is the reshuffling of priorities is really the, I'm sorry, go back one. Oh yeah, go ahead two. Sorry, got my slides mixed up. You can go to the next one. The reshuffling of priorities was probably one of the most pronounced things we saw, and I think that, you know, as Kevin mentioned, I lived inside of a bank for 20 years. Spent a lot of that time with a lot of like-minded people saying the customer experience work that we do has to be a key top priority, and it was for many years. And what we saw is that has taken a shift to the back burner. So not necessarily something I'm happy to report, but it is the reality of the environment that we're seeing. And what you can see is that the things that have taken it over are technology, getting back to basics around customer trust. And you can completely understand what we went through over the last year in terms of really understanding where people are and making sure that we're acting in their best interests. And new products and services and process automation is something we'll talk about in a moment, are the things that have shifted that. I will say, I think we're seeing folks get back to customer experience. And probably the most interesting thing that we saw was when we actually sliced this data a little bit. If you can go to the next slide, and you can skip ahead to the next one. I think one of the most interesting things we saw is that when you look at companies during the crisis over the last year, we separated out and asked people sort of where they were in their own journey. And we had folks that we put into a stabilize bucket. Those were people that were keeping the lights on, just trying to keep the business afloat. And these are all financial services firms, so banks, insurance companies, payment businesses, and those that were already moving on into a next phase of growth mode, of learning how to operate differently based upon the environment that they're in. And the folks that were in these different phases acted very, very differently. And certainly the customer experience component of what we just talked about was one of the things that we saw that was different, is that the folks that were in growth mode were actually able to focus on those things. And what we're seeing, and if you go to the next slide, the people with that longer term mindset, the growers, were able to make changes in their business over the last year that the folks that were in the stabilize mode were not able to make, which is a concerning trend because that only increases the disparity between those businesses. And the amount of catch up from the stabilizer group is something we're a little worried about. And we're excited for the growers because some of the innovation and some of the really cool things that have come out of the last year have been really exciting to see, and is something that we expect to stick around and be here over the long term. So you can go to the next point here. So the last thing that we're seeing, and the major trend that got uncovered from the research that we did, is those that are achieving their growth objectives and that they're doing it in scale have really started to bring automation into the business. It's something people have talked about for a very, very long time, but we're now seeing that come to fruition and having an impact. So you can go to the next slide. So what you see here, the folks that are focused on those long-term objectives, they are in a growth mindset. They are taking the time to digitize their operations now to prepare for future disruptions. That's one of the key insights of when you look into the data. Is part of it is, yes, it's about reducing errors and some cost savings, but the idea of using analytics and information to identify where you have gaps in your processes and where you have weaknesses, to modify those processes, to digitize them, so that when the next shock to the system comes, the preparation that exists allows you to absorb that in a way that maybe some folks, even those that were in, everybody took a shock to the system, nobody was really fully prepared. But the folks that are now making that preparation are saying, when something like this happens again, whether it's a societal thing or a health thing or even an economic shock, that preparation exists, and spending that time to do that. So on the next slide, the idea that digitizing also gets into this concept of intelligent automation. So when we uncovered this and identified this idea of intelligent automation, it's not just I want to take a process and have it go from beginning to end in a completely automated way. It is the feedback loop of analytics and understanding what is driving a process, and then actually automating things in an intelligent way that then creates an opportunity for you to be proactive with your customers, and actually give an autonomous component to how you interact with them. And by autonomous, we mean, you are identifying an opportunity with that customer that you need to do something from a service perspective and be proactive and take action on their behalf and leverage that digitized operation that you have so that you can actually build out on that. And those are the things that ultimately delight customers and generate that long-term relationship, because that customer understands that you've got their back and you have an understanding of what they're doing. What you can see here are some examples of what we're seeing across the various subsectors. So certainly in a business context, in commercial banking, that automating of account transfers, we've all been able to move money online for a very long time, but the ability to monitor accounts and move money proactively on behalf of your customer to optimize a cash position, or making product recommendations that are going to give a better outcome for the customer, and making those shifts and rebalancing, whether it's a portfolio in the wealth management side or a saving strategy on the traditional banking side of things. And also on the credit end, pre-qualifying, letting you know when you have options that maybe didn't exist in the past that are ultimately going to result in you saving money, and as the financial institution earning business that you may not have otherwise had the opportunity to win. And this also then leads to ultimately a better customer experience. And so if we just go to the next slide here. So the idea here, and this is feedback from folks in the survey, if you look at what we were just talking about in terms of autonomous finance, and then you look at the feedback that we're hearing about from our customers and how they feel about their relationship with their financial institution, you can see that they still feel like we're not delivering on that promise to provide that great service and support in a proactive way, and to do it from a customer-centric point of view. That rebalancing of your product portfolio in terms of what is best for you is a very customer-centric thing. And I know many bankers, the ones I talk to on a day-to-day basis, want to provide that, but they have the technology barriers or the intelligent analytics barriers to really understand what is that perfect mix. We're now at a place where the data is available, the automation capabilities are available, so we can deliver that. And we predict that as these things come to fruition and banks begin to deliver more and more of these capabilities, as insurance companies begin to rethink how they address policy, then that you will ultimately see a rise in customer experience and brand loyalty that didn't exist before. And the last point I'll make on this topic is, and you go to the next slide here. So, I'm pontificating and saying that we think this is what's going to happen. I think our survey respondents feel the same way, which is what's more important than my perspective, is that the opportunity to have an impact on the business and this proactive approach to supporting customers, to reaching out and engagement and using analytics and combining that with action and automation is a critical key to success. So it's very, very important to figure it out. We love working with our customers to navigate these challenges, because it's not as simple as we make it look in some pretty slide presentations, but it is something that has some very real potential to have significant outcome. And so, Kevin, I'll turn it back to you. Those are the three trends that we're seeing, and hopefully helped lay some foundation for the discussion.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Greg. That was excellent. I did have a question, and we're going to use the chat group for more of a formal Q&A at the end, but I just had one for you. I kind of wanted to make sure we touched on, because not every trend flows into that survey, nor does it certainly allow for us to unpack in your presentation. So I was curious if there was one more topic or thought you had on, as you look at, if you're a bank 3 to 5 years out, what's something on the cutting edge, bleeding edge that you see that maybe you just didn't put into this because it wasn't highlighted in that survey, but certainly on your mind, the conversations you're having?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing about these trends is it's a good pulse on what the leadership at financial services companies are seeing today. And so I think it's very important to understand that. I think one of the lucky things we have at Salesforce is that we're working with the entire industry. And so we kind of get to see what everybody's working on that hasn't seen the light of day yet, and where people are placing bets. And I think we've been talking about the sort of rise of banking as a service and ecosystems, and really making it sort of possible for banks or insurance as a service to consume services from each other and create a completely different model for how they operate. So we're working on a couple things that are really interesting, and we see others doing the same. Where I think the model of, you have your transactional systems that are in the back end that we're trying to unlock, and then we're putting a CRM on top of it or something like that, or an engagement layer. I think we're very close to on the cusp of that model changing, and it completely changing the business models of financial services companies, banks partnering more, in the full customer life cycle, and same with an insurance company. If you're there talking about, getting your auto policy in order, that's probably because you're about to buy a car, and how can we leverage, banking as a service providers for an insurance company to partner together to bring the loan. And I think that I haven't seen us at a place, I've been in this industry a long time, where that feels like it's about to hit. And so I think that's the other thing we'll see here is the partnerships that all the API stuff is going to enable is getting mature, where it's gonna start to get interesting really fast.
That's really exciting, and a new term for everyone: BaaS, banking as a service. So I'm going to roll with that. Thanks, Greg. We'll probably come back to you in the Q&A. And as I kind of think about his comments, the term automate certainly sticks out, which I think is a good segue into Michael and Gabi. When you think about automate, that's looking at your investments more strategically and what you're going to do as a bank, as a financial institution, and the personnel and the hiring and the bets you make. There's a strategic angle to that as you go through a digital and data transformation to set you up for the ability to automate. And you certainly need the data. And that's a good kind of segue into Michael and Gabi. Michael is, as I mentioned, kind of runs the financial service team. And USEReady is a strong implementation partner, a longtime analytics partner of Tableau. And Michael, I'll turn it over to you to talk to Gabi from Dime Community Bank on just kind of how we set this up and get companies started.
Thanks, Kevin, and thanks everyone for joining this morning. Hopefully you found Greg's comments to be as interesting as I did. As Kevin mentioned, we're a top tier, we're actually Tableau's top financial services partner, but we're also a Salesforce partner. So we help clients look through these transformation lenses through one and can develop one single roadmap to go execute. So we probably work with the top 10 banks in the world and over 250 other financial services institutions. And one of them is Dime Bank. And I wanted to have Gabi introduce himself, talk a little bit about his role at the bank, and then we'll dig into some of the technology stack that they're currently leveraging and how analytics is really shaping the future of how that bank will operate. So Gabi, maybe a quick introduction on yourself and your role at the bank, and then we'll jump in.
Sure. Good. Name is Gabi Galoni. I've been working at Dime Community Bank for 21 years. Definitely well tenured there. And one of the things that I've always worked really in the finance area. However, I've been migrating more towards data analytics as my tenure has increased. There's definitely a nice segue between finance and data. There's always an importance of looking at return on investment and everything we do with on the financial side. So data is very important for that. And then therefore, utilizing data has helped us also in our finance area to really become more profitable. Although I've been working for 21 years, I was working at our bank was Dime Community Bank reached about $6 billion in assets, and then last year we just merged with B&B Bank, Bridgehampton National Bank in July, and the anniversary is actually coming soon from the announcement. And we are now one of the largest banks on Long Island, New York, from Montauk to Manhattan. That's where we are.
Thanks, Gavi. And I think, that's an interesting topic that maybe we can dig into later, because I think a lot of the attendees on this webinar may be working for regional or community banks that may be participating in some of the M&A activities. So any lessons that you've learned from that, I think would be fun to unpack as we evolve this conversation. But Kimberly, we can move to the next slide and start the conversation. The first question, Gavi, is really a two-part question, but what role is analytics playing in your organization today? And how has that changed over the last year or so with the merger? And how do you project that it will continue to change?
So I think we'll kind of answer the last question first, given the fact that we have gone through transformations over the last year. We did go through mergers. We're still a standalone bank. Dime Community Bank in general, as a standalone company, was merging or going towards a business commercial bank charter to some extent. We did have a lot of consumer deposits, but we also were becoming more commercial based. And our focus was really always on the commercial side, but we also had a large consumer base. We wanted to make sure that we were able to weed out and find the most profitable customers. As we have migrated to the merged bank, where Bridgehampton was a tremendous commercial bank in Eastern Long Island, the focus has been on the commercial side. And I think that's been the biggest change, is that the fact is the change in priority between consumer to business, is that's where really our focus is. We have the ability to easily get the commercial deposits, given the fact of the name of Bridgehampton, and also the name that Dime Community Bank had in the 5 boroughs. I think that one of the big things now that we are a merged company, and we have gone through a pandemic. I think we're definitely analytics today is really looking to try to optimize our customer base. And really understand who our customer is, and how we can provide our customer. During the pandemic, we can take a look at, we've seen that we saw the opportunity that there were a lot of transactions that were happening at the branch, and we realized that we had to understand what these transactions are, and how we could take those transactions and make them not at the branch, and to be digitize them and put them online, whether it's mobile banking, online banking, et cetera. So that is really where what we've seen over the last year or so, is that it's pushed us into really understanding the customer, the type of transactions, and trying to moving them into a more of a digital product and digital service. That is definitely going to continue going forward, for sure. You definitely have heard a lot of banks over the last, even before the pandemic, looking to close branches because of the fact that there's the customers have changed behaviors, but with the pandemic, it's even changed even more so. So the opportunity is to make sure to understand, looking at your customer base, seeing the opportunities to digitize them, and there will be opportunities probably to custom expenses, by closing, or at least reshuffling the branches and where they are. So that's really, I think, where we see the analytics going. In addition to looking for the next best product for your customers, and also to build fee income, especially in this really challenging environment.
That's great. I think the key theme there is that you've embarked on a journey to really cultivate that customer 360 view, so you better understand the nature of that relationship that they have with the bank and how to expand it. We all know that all banks are trying to increase that product per customer ratio, and the cheapest way to do that is not to spend more in marketing, but it's to identify opportunities within your existing customer base to expand that relationship. So I think that's a strong theme that many bankers on the call can probably resonate with. So thank you. I think we'll move to the next question, which is, what impact does analytics have on your executives and their decision making?
So I think that's evolving. I think if you go through many different banks and different executives, they all have a different focus. It depends how tenured they are. I think there are many tenured bankers that are slower to look at metrics. They're more of the make the loans, have relationships, and we'll worry about the profitability kind of later. I think over the course of a number of years, given the fact that you do have some banks, fintechs that are causing some disruption. I think that you're having executives are taking a second look and trying to figure out ways of how to look at metrics to improve their the system. I think the world is changing, and definitely the executives are coming around. I think that looking at data to understand customer behavior or customer profitability is becoming more important, as mentioned before, especially during the rate environment that we're in. As an example, I think one of the things that I think executives or what we are able to provide is a big question that's come up is, let's say, lines of credit that are being that were offered. Here's an opportunity by looking at the analytics and say, well, have they used a line? I mean, we understand that from a perspective of if a customer has not used their line of credit, what's going to happen is that there's a cost for the bank to hold the account on your core system. In addition to that, from a CECL perspective, you probably even have to consider holding additional capital because of an allowance for that. So these are things that I think where metrics come into play and how executives are looking at this to find ways to really streamline these these expenses and to look at the data we have to help us become more profitable.
I think that's excellent. I think I saw a research study recently that showed that financial services institutions that are analytics driven or analytics based are 23 times more likely to be successful than their peers. So the fact that this isn't just an isolated function within finance, but it sort of goes to the top level where everyone is sort of embracing the opportunity that analytics presents is fantastic, and it should continue to pay dividends as it has already started to do so for you also. That's great. And our next question is, what role will Tableau play in your organization going forward? I guess you could start that with what role does it play today, and what role will it play going forward?
Right. So I think we have partnered with USEReady, implementing Tableau in our company, and so far our data team has utilized that to some extent, to build certain dashboards. Dashboard that we've created as a standalone was a credit dashboard showing a credit administration department looking at loans that are potentially were going to default, not paying, and potential changes in risk ratings that were done. So we built that. We definitely built that. Then it was since it's a merger, we're still looking to further that. Further build Tableau further into that. One of the things that we see that Tableau is very important for, and then how we are utilizing Tableau, is that we've built we've taken our data, and given the fact that we're over $10 billion right now, we have to really have it governed in such a way that the data is very easy to actually report on. There has to be a data dictionary. There has to be structures involved to make sure we understand the actual very much the data fields that we have. And so for data aggregations and building that before going into Tableau is going to be very important, for us to give insights to the various business lines, and also to have business lines potentially be able to build their own dashboards and reports, because that's very important. Without them understanding the data, making it easier for them to understand, and also make sure that the data is consistent in terms of definitions throughout the organization, that you cannot even, I don't care whatever reporting tool you have, you need to have that first. And so it's we're really denormalizing our data that we have to make it more normalized to easily to build data warehouses and data marts. And what we're trying to do right now is that we see Tableau being very, very important for our retail customers, from our retail bankers to understand their customers, money coming in, going out, what new products have come in. We also see from the lending side to understand what's happening in terms of their balances, what's happening to their portfolios, and then in terms of treasury management is to understand, okay, what services have our customers taken on, what ACH, what RDC, renewable deposit capture. So we're definitely going to be building these dashboards and these reports for our various business lines to understand understand the customer, and to be able to eventually assist in knowing what to provide to customers going forward, what they may need given either other customers that we have at the bank already, or by looking at analytics to see from external sources to see what we can provide our current customers and new offerings that we can provide them. So we see that this is what we see Tableau going forward, for our organization.
Excellent. And I think one of the key themes or takeaways from that comment is the importance of data quality. In order to have best-in-class analytics, which you guys are striving to have, you need to have a key focus on the quality of the data. And we work with many clients to put in place data governance and data protocols so that you can in fact create best-in-class analytics, so that the insights that you generate can be actionable and have a meaningful impact on the bank, on the business. So that's excellent. Next question is, have you used Tableau to differentiate your offering in the market, and what insights has it helped you gain?
So, we mentioned before during the, let's say during the pandemic, we were able to build a couple of dashboards providing to our pandemic group, showing what was happening to our branch transactions during the pandemic, prior and during. And we were constantly showing on a weekly basis, what was happening, what time of day accounts were actually, transactions were happening, so knowing when to keep branches open. And one of the things that we were able to differentiate is because of the fact that we were able to see what type of transactions they were doing prior to the pandemic. We were able to offer our customers, hey, we have mobile banking, and do you know that? And we reach out to them, and there was significant amount of adoption for mobile banking, giving them the ability to do remote deposits, withdrawals via Zelle. So we definitely marketed to them. So you don't have to come to a branch. You can easily do that through your phone, through online banking, through bill pay, and we really pushed that going forward during the pandemic. And I think going forward, we're still working with that to see what else we can provide and how we can differentiate. We do need to segment our customer base. Now that we're more as a commercial bank, we have to segment our customer base based on the industries that our business customers are in, see what products they have already, see what the research shows of what products they should have, and really to understand, what maybe we can create a product that will be able to differentiate ourselves from the other from our other competitors. One of the big things that we have now with consolidation happening is that community banks are important because of the fact that that community banks can get things done faster anyway, and even with that, the opportunities of gaining customers from like recent mergers that have occurred is going to be very, very important, given the fact of the white glove service that we can provide to our customers.
Yep, I was going to highlight that. I think that's a distinct advantage that community banks have, is the focal point of the customer and the importance of their customer experience and that customer service that's provided. So great distinguishing factor there. Next question is.
Yeah, and as you ask that question, Michael, I'll just remind the audience now's a good time to start putting questions in the chat they'd have for Michael, Gavi, Greg, or myself as we have plenty of time still, but want to make sure that we can see those and get some of those question answers as you're towards the end of the segment here with Gavi.
Yep. Next question is, how has your recent merger impacted your data strategy? And how has it changed your approach to the use of data today and going forward?
Right, so I think some of these points have already been addressed, but I think I'll just expand them a little bit more. I mean, I think we now, as I said, we went from a $6 billion bank to over 10 billion. We're about $12 billion right now. Data governance is extremely important. It's going to be one of the probably most critical things that probably when we have our exam is going to be addressed. How we're handling our data, how we're storing our data. Do we understand our data, and is there a governance on it? So I think that's going to be a main focus. Whenever you go through a merger, there's always going to be data quality issues and data cleanup, and we also have to find ways of, especially of going to a new core or to a different core, or depending on what happened. For us in our case, we merged. It was a merger of equals, so we actually decided to pick one core. We actually went to the core that Bridgehampton had, and that requires a whole understanding of the data, what the core can do, what it can't do, and it's really more about understanding that and building a governance on that, and building making sure that we can build these data sets, as we said before, that can easily report on, that not just our data team can do, but also our business lines can definitely do themselves. In terms of how it's changed, so as I said before, as coming from more of a consumer/commercial bank or to almost a fully commercial bank, the approach is going to be quite different. The bank really has a significant amount of interest-free deposits already, significant amount. And with this rate environment that we're in, although that looks like rates might be changing or going towards, might be increasing in the next year or so, the approach is that we're definitely fine from a profitability standpoint from the way that we're insulated because of our interest-free deposits. However, I do think that it does make a note that we need to really look at our data to improve our non-interest income and our treasury services and our treasury management. Because one thing I think we all realize that without multiple services per account, even though business customers do have a banker that they deal with, you do want to make sure that your customers are embedded with you, given the products you have. The more products they have, the less opportunity for them to move elsewhere. Research has shown that. I think everyone on this call probably who are bankers know that already. And so I think that as we take that, we're going to be utilizing this data to really focus on the profitability of our customers, see where we can look at customers that may not be as profitable, and encourage them to either become more profitable, or maybe encourage them to not be part of this bank. They're not interested, and given the amount of liquidity that we currently have. So I think that's how we're going to really utilize data going forward, is to improve our profitability, look at opportunities where we can go to new markets, maybe even do I'm not saying consolidate, but move our branch footprint a little bit, and we get to a point where we want to become one of the most profitable banks in the Northeast, and I think data is going to help us get there.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say you're well on your way. We had a question come in from the audience, and then the question is, can you speak more about how you've handled internal change management? We know banks tend to be traditional and sometimes resistant to change from legacy, and they understand they need to digitize, modernize, et cetera, but many times legacy systems and processes are so ingrained in their organizations. Can you speak to how you as a team are addressing this?
Well, it's definitely a challenge. 100% agree. We are looking to figure out ways of how to manage regulators' expectations by also using automation as much as possible. One thing we have learned is that controls are being looked at much more now than over $10 billion, and so they definitely have to. I think it's definitely the mindset is going to have be forced to change to make processes faster. And I think we see that already of how certain processes are done. That maybe there are processes that we call legacy Dime has done that's been better, and legacy B&B has been better. I think it's looking at both processes, and over time, it's not going to be done in one shot, but over time, it's going to take to say, okay, we're reaching a point where we have a roadblock. We have to get this done faster. We have to work with our IT department to actually work this internal change in order to get processes to move forward. And I think it's starting to happen. But we just finished. Our merger was completed on 2/1. So we're only about 5 months there, so it's still a process. I'll tell you for sure.
Excellent. Yeah, I think it's a continuous process, but one that if you focus on it should help execute your strategy. Kevin, was there another question that came in?
Yeah, Gavi, you mentioned working with your data teams to implement Tableau. I think people always want to know, hey, if you could do it again, lessons learned, best practices. So anything you'd have on that, but also maybe how you build out those teams. So the implementation piece, lessons learned, but maybe more so even the personnel and the hiring, the strategic skills you're looking for as you build this out. One on implementation and two on the personnel and skill set.
So first of all, USEReady has been great from an implementation standpoint. I think you need to have dedicated IT resources to get that done. Make sure your servers are up to date, updated properly. Follow procedures in that to get that, because really Tableau does require a significant amount of server resources, whether you do it in the cloud or on-prem. It's still something that needs to get done. So I think in that sense, I think from our data, from the way that our team has been constructed, we do have a data scientist and a couple of senior data analysts who have master's degrees from data science schools. So I think I'm very happy with my team, and my team is extremely adaptive. They've utilized Tableau in their in their schools, so they're familiar with that. So I think the biggest thing is that you need to get good project management and make sure that everything's done accordingly. You have to have the resources, you have to have buy-in, and really you need to have executives to say, this is what we want to do, we want to implement this. I need to put the resources in there. I think we were also implementing Tableau at a time we were on the verge of going through a merger. So that's also, there definitely competing resources and competing projects going on at the same time, which can be a little bit tricky and dicey to deal with. But it's something that is you need to say that we need to do this, and you need to get those dedicated resources, and you have to get executive management to push. So that's one of the things we did see some there was competing resources, and especially during the pandemic, which was another thing too, didn't help much. We definitely have to put that into place.
Got it. Thank you. I think that was all the questions you had outlined for Gavi, plus a few from the audience. Correct, Michael?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a few wrap comments, and maybe if we get one or two more questions in the chat, that's great, Kimber, if you see one. But this is a recorded session. This is the first part of a series of banking related sessions and financial institution type thought leadership sessions we're going to be doing throughout the summer. So this is part one, and it will be recorded up on the vault soon. I did want to say anyone who's attended this, we'll make sure you get the Tableau Public Trends and Financial Services content that Greg walked through. And also just want to really thank everyone for their time. I mean, Michael, really appreciate you brokering that conversation with Gavi. As you guys know, walking out here, USEReady is a great Tableau and Salesforce partner. Greg, always good to hear from you, our industry insider. Love your thoughts and maybe what's even coming down the pike with banking as a service. That was a good thought. And a special thanks to Gavi. It's hard in this industry to get people sometimes to just give us the time and talk about what's going on inside their walls. And so I really appreciate it. Dime Community Bank, if you're in the Northeast, that is who you should be banking with. They're on the rise and certainly had some great thoughts there on how you construct a team, how you manage data, how you govern data, and some things to consider. So I hope the audience really enjoyed this first, we'll call it 3-part series. We look to do one more towards the end of summer in August, and then maybe right when everyone gets back to school, September timeframe. So that's sort of the play, and we'll take all the feedback offline. Kimberly, was there anything else in the chat, or should we give everyone in about 5 minutes back in their day as we planned? I'll take that silence as, oh, we got one.
Looks like there might be one more.
It looks like one more question here. I can just read it out.
Okay.
Banking customers have said the financial wellness journey is so important to us. How do your front-facing teams manage these conversations to not be transactional and be more consultative, at least with analytics?
I guess it's meant for me, right, Michael?
I think so. You're sort of the star of the show, Gavi, so you take it.
Oh, thank you. Again, I think one of the big items I mentioned is that we're more of a commercial-based customer. I think that's the idea. When the people that you're hiring to be on the front lines, they're really more relationship banking, and they are, there's a trust between your banker and your customer. The customer believes in your banker. That's what it usually is. Each bankers have portfolios. Bankers are trained to give the best advice to the customers. So I think they understand what's needed. People, and we definitely have programs in place to make sure that our bankers know well what they can sell, what they should sell. They can work up the chain. We have a lot of experience at the executive level. So I think they actually communicate and exactly what is needed at the for the customer. So there's definitely that's the most important thing, is getting the right people in the in your retail side that understands the various products, understands the business, understands the industry, and for that they are going to do the best part of give you the best products that's needed to make a company be successful.
Yeah, well said.
Excellent.
Thanks for that question from the audience. I'll just pause here and maybe wait 10 more seconds, but I think that might be the wrap. And so hopefully everyone came away with, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there's one thing I wanted to point out about since this is a Salesforce Tableau, although we're not a Salesforce company, I mean I do think that I think there are a couple of things I mentioned about they're having the right people, and I think that one of the things that you have with data analytics and with the idea of automation, and you need to have, when you hire people, you're starting to hire people that have a different mindset than your I guess your old-time banker. And the fact is that you may think that looking at Salesforce as just as a CRM system, it's much more than that. It's a system that really it's almost a culture. And the fact is that when you start looking to hire people, whether we're looking at that from our data team standpoint, we're looking at people that really are thinking in a different manner. And when you hire those people, when you implement like a Salesforce, what you're doing is you're really looking for a person that is innovative, that's going to think, and that's really going to go beyond, because the tools are there within the Salesforce environment. And if you build your data analytics platforms correctly, people are going to start saying, wow, I see this now, I see this now. And it becomes a different mindset. And then you get people who are excited, who are going to be coming onto the organization, and you can be looking for people that are going to have that excitement and look to really improve your, improve. So I think that it's something to understand that data analytics doesn't just change the way, what we do for our customers. It changes the opportunities for the team that you're actually building throughout the entire organization. And so I think that it's very important to understand that. And that actually can be efficiencies, because people like that can really wear multiple hats and really can improve a company's efficiency ratio. So I just wanted to point that out, that, that's one of the things that I think we're trying to, would hope to achieve, is to provide those people. We also have to build the platforms to get those people into our organization.
Yeah, well said. And I can see from the audience here, nobody really dropped off because everyone wanted to hear that thought. So I appreciate that. Michael, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think that not only is our Salesforce and Tableau sort of internal cultural products, but as a company, Salesforce has done an amazing job of creating a community of users that kind of collaborate with one another to further their skill sets. So for any people that are on this webinar that are early on in that journey, I think you can rest assured that there's a very strong community there to support these your efforts and your Tableau and Salesforce journeys.
Yeah, I mean, those are the convos that Michael, Greg, and I have every day, right? How to digitize, how to modernize. And so really that was the point of today. I think, and Greg, you did a great job of talking about the trends. Change is happening, and this industry is being disrupted, whether we maybe like it or not. It is happening, and we do need to kind of face the music on that, and then think through what are those tech investments we make. To make these pivots, there isn't a thought of, well, we got to agree to make these technology investments and change the mind shift, which is exactly what you were kind of outlining, Gavi. So I appreciate that. It just so happens that Salesforce and Tableau are great partners to leverage, those bets moving forward. And so we thank everyone for their time. Hopefully you got a bigger perspective from Greg and the industry and what's happening, and thoughts from Gavi on Michael on how to use data to power you through that, and kind of some best practices and thoughts on how you map out, build out your teams in the framework strategically. So with that, thank you for attending the webinar series. Thank you for attending the Vault. Special shout out to Gavi and Dime Community Bank, Greg Jacoby from Salesforce, Mike Olson from USEReady. I'm Kevin with Tableau, and Kimberly, we're signing off. Thanks everyone. Have a great rest of the day.
Everybody.